All right, this is going to be the recap for Tuesday, May 26th. So the first thing I noticed when I hopped on is that we had this big new week opening gap. So pretty much I just wanted us to trade lower into here at open and then look for longs out of that. But if we look at open, 9:30, let's go back. Let's go back to open. So we had the gap down here with 1800 as well from Sunday. So also yesterday was a bank holiday, so it was a little bit weird since we had basically two key opens. But I was more so focused on this one, midnight open from today, so from last night, because as you can see, we're actually respecting that along with this 1 hour gap here. So I wasn't really looking at this one up here too much, but I did notice that if you were looking at this one from Monday, the daily did open lower. But pretty much for open, what I was looking for is for us to trade lower, maybe sweep out London low into this new week opening gap right here. But what happened at open was we trade lower into, let me get rid of this. We actually trade lower into this 15-minute rejection block, which was also, if you look on the 1 hour, is also a 1 hour rejection block that was still holding out of the 1 hour gap and midnight open. And from there, we make an SMT with ES. Oh, here's ES. So ES actually sweeps London low right here, but still leaves behind this new week opening gap. So we can see we have this big SMT here, and then we have this 15-minute rejection block right here. And if we actually scale onto the 1 minute, we have a 1 minute rejection block out of the CE of this 15-minute rejection block, SMT, and I think we had this. Yeah, and OTE, which closed a little past OTE on the 1 minute, but you have the SMT, so it doesn't really matter. So if you took this would have been the long. This would have been really good. I just wanted to wait for 10 a.m. and I didn't really like this here. How even on ES we had SMT, but we left the gap lower still. So still wanted to wait for this to get hit or see what 10 a.m. does. But yep, pretty much this would have been, oops, this would have been the long. And let's see. So you could take that up to 1800 or all-time high, which was, yeah, right here. So after that, 10 a.m. opened. Well, at this point, we already swept all-time high, but on ES, we were still way down here, right? But in Q, all the way up here, already swept all-time high. So at this point, I was looking for 10 a.m. to open lower, maybe into some 5-minute structure, maybe tap 1800 again, maybe open up a 15-minute gap, something like that, and just trade the continuation. But I also noticed on ES that this 4 hour, I think it would have been this one, yep, this 4 hour, it didn't close very bullish. It just sweeps this high, closed back inside the range, and we're still holding this 4 hour gap here. And we also had rebalanced this 4 hour range here, or we were about to. And then inside of the 4 hour gap, we actually had a 1 hour gap, which we had actually edged earlier. See, with this 1 hour wick, we edged this 1 hour gap. So I was looking at this, doing this high here as engineered liquidity for this 1 hour gap to then trade lower. On top of that, to get more precise, inside of the 1 hour gap, we also had a 15-minute gap inside of the 1 hour gap, which I wanted to wait for this 15-minute gap to get hit as well for more precise entry. There wasn't really anything else, no 5-minute gaps or anything besides this one, but I was more so looking at this, yeah, this 15-minute, and then the 4 hour OTE as well, which we don't really care as much about that. More so I was looking at, yeah, this 1 hour. So basically, we had 10 a.m. So if we go for NQ, I guess, so we had 10 a.m. opened, didn't really give much. I viewed it as opening lower, didn't really trade into anything, and then just continued to expand higher. No real entries for that. Yeah. Nothing really to take on NQ. Not really long entry. Can't really short this. Go to ES. And you can see we actually have 10 a.m. on ES. Doesn't really do anything. Kind of opens lower, but just this one candle isn't really enough manipulation for me. And then eventually we finally hit this 1 hour and sweep out this 1 hour high that I was looking at if I potentially wanted to short. So we actually get a decent 1 minute rejection block, but I didn't want to take this one because I was still waiting for this 15-minute gap right here to get hit, which was inside of the 1 hour. So we actually form, this is, you could call this a 1 minute. With the third candle's close. But this is a 2 minute. I think this would be the 2 minute. But I was looking at this, the 3 minute here looked the best to me. And 3 minute. Enter here. Stop loss here. Target. I think there was a 15-minute gap. 15-minute gap right here. Pretty small gap, but you can see right there. And the mistake I made is my stop loss was a tiny bit too tight and ES makes equal highs right here. Get stopped out because my stop should have been right here to keep me safe, and that's why I don't usually trade ES. But that was that. Stop should have been here. Okay, I see this, and then I was like, okay, 3 minutes still holding. So I re-enter. And what also gave me confidence to re-enter is that we made a new 1 minute after making equal highs right here. And let me get rid of this. So this is a 1 minute. But my entry was pretty much here, I think. Stop 1 point above these highs in case we make 3 equal highs, or 4 in this case, and target this 15-minute gap. So about 1 to 4, my entry might have been a little bit lower, maybe 1 to 3. And as you can see, we actually come all the way down to the new week opening gap. So could have held for a lot more, for 1 to 13, but 1 loss, 1 win. Unfortunately, equal highs stopped me on the first one. Re-entry, not as good, but still a good trade. And yeah, you can see how for this 4-hour candle, for the 10 a.m. candle, 10 a.m. actually opened higher for the 4-hour expansion, sweeping out this high, still holding this 4-hour gap, and we actually have a SMT here with all-time highs now. But yeah, best trade of the day probably would be these longs here around 9:40 if you took the 1 minute off of this 15-minute rejection block, which is also a 5-minute CE. Yeah, would have been really good. I just wanted ES to trade a bit lower. We actually leave this on NQ. Now ES finally hits it around almost 12, and we'll see what we do from there. Okay, bye.